Daniel?
I will find out, and I'll adjust the phone as needed.
Okay.
Okay.
Poor Daniel.
All right. Connecting. We're on there.
Thank you for joining us live on RainierAvenueRadio.world, your community radio station for Seniors Matter, with your host, Brenda Charles Edwards. Seniors Matter invites a variety of guests to discuss activities, issues, and resources that may impact the lives of older adults and their families. My special guest today is Erica DiMiele. She is a featured hoarding cleanup expert and IMDb listed on Air Talent on A&E's Emmy-nominated primetime television show Hoarders. Erica is also the owner of Steri-Clean Washington, which provides hoarding and biohazard, I am having a time today, remediation services of all types and specializes in trauma scene cleanup. Her company services the entire state of Washington. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
Gosh.
I know that was a mouthful.
Yes, it was. But so what is IMDb listed?
So IMDb listed is basically if anyone has been on TV, any televised segment, you can list yourself on IMDb and you're just nationally recognized for being on a television or movie show.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was in a movie once, but that was years ago.
What one?
I was had a bit part. It was something to do with John F. Kennedy many years ago. I was an extra.
Got it. I love it. You can list yourself.
Okay, I love it. Okay, so what is hoarding disorder and what are the characteristics that define it?
So hoarding disorder is a brand new mental health disorder that is actually in the DSM-5. It entered into the Diagnostic Statistics Manual of Mental Health Diagnosis in 2013. What hoarding disorder is a perceived value of a possession or possessions primarily that the individual who hoards places on that possession and hoards it to the point of impeding functionality in their home. For example, a person, because they have so many of X, can no longer bathe in their bathtub, shower in their shower, cook in their kitchen, so they're confined to just parts of their home. And what it boils down to is that the home is no longer used for its intended purpose.
Does that help with creating isolation?
Yeah, it does. Totally. It absolutely does. Because the more things that come in, for whatever reason, what we find in a lot of hoarding cases is that the individual who hoards wants to barricade themselves in and shut the world out, and their possessions become their identity. So the characteristics that define it are a perceived value on possessions. For example, if someone collects trash, there's different types of hoarding, which we'll get into later. The average individual would look at that and say, why is a person keeping trash and why is it valuable? You can't reason with someone who hoards.
Right.
Why? Because it's a perceived value and it's individualistic for each individual.
That is so very true. So what's the difference between hoarding and collecting?
So hoarding and collecting, a lot of people who we find hoard say, oh no, I'm not a hoarder, I'm just a collector. The difference between hoarding and collecting is that when you collect, you have pride around your possessions and they're showcased, in most cases, organized. You invite people in to see them. And what you talked about, hoarding, there's an isolation factor that almost always accompanies it. So hoarding boils down to shame and collection boils down to feeling pride and joy around your possessions. And you want to show them with others. People who hoard, their families haven't entered their home in years. That's not a collection, it's a hoard. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I do. Believe me, I do. Yes, I do. Is there a genetic component to hoarding? Is it a learned behavior or both?
In most cases, we are finding that it's 50-50. So I'm not on the research end of it. I do keep up with material in my field to always further my knowledge around the disorder. They are finding that there is a genetic component to hoarding. There's a lot of studies going on right now that talk about different parts of the brain and decision making, which it pertains to hoarding, and an inability for a person who hoards to make a decision literally because of the chemistry in their brain during brain scans. In other instances, what we find is that it's a learning behavior. There's two cases. One child who potentially grew up in a hoard learns to hoard, and their home, which they carried over from their childhood, is now hoarded. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the child of someone who hoards is a minimalist, and they don't want to keep anything. So sometimes it's a learned behavior, and then obviously with medical research, they're learning that there's brain scans that prove that it is a genetic component.
So I went to this class recently, and they were talking about hoarding, and one of the things that came out of the class was that some of this hoarding started back in the Depression, where, you know, people didn't have anything, so when things got better, they just, you know, there's the sale, 3 for whatever, and then 10 over here, and people just start stockpiling in their basements. Now, I realize that that's part of a food thing and maybe clothes, but I think from what they were saying, it just carries on to everything else.
Yep.
So
absolutely,
that's kind of scary, but then also that's the psychology of it that's a little more understandable versus someone just being a slob.
Totally. And a lot of people think a person who hoards, they're just a slob. They're just lazy. And it's easy to say that because when someone, and especially the ones that you see on the show, they don't pick up. And so it's easy to say that person is a slob. They have no motivation. It's easy to say that because that's what you see. But when you uncover the why behind the behavior, which is unique to each individual, we work with a lot of Depression-era hoarding clientele who save cans because they can be used as storage containers. They save thousands of rubber bands because they might need them someday in the future.
I save rubber bands.
Yeah, well, I know, but is it impeding the functionality of your home?
I don't think so, because I go on the back of the doorknobs.
Exactly. So that's what we're talking about. So it's difficult, especially people who live longer than I have, to have that conversation. I didn't grow up in the Depression. So how can I say you shouldn't save that when that's what they knew or that's how they were raised?
Right.
It's a delicate line, and I never want to cross a boundary, but I do challenge them gently and say, you haven't used it in a year. You haven't used it in 10. You're not going to, and it's okay to let it go.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Seniors Matter with your host, Brenda Charles Edwards, live on www.rainieravenueradio.world, Facebook, and in the TuneIn Radio app. Today, my guest is Erica DiMiele. Erica began her career in the home restoration industry nearly 10 years ago, where she started her first business from scratch, a professional organization firm based in Seattle, Washington. As a professional organizer, Erica and her team serve busy moms, widowed fathers, Amazon and Microsoft executives, and those needing home organization and productivity services all throughout the greater Seattle area. Erica transitioned into hoarding and extreme cleaning full-time by purchasing Steri-Clean Washington in 2017 and has effectively remediated hundreds of the most severe, hazardous, and hoarded homes in Washington state. How do you do that? I got to tell you something real quick. I'm a mobile notary, and I do a lot of loan signings. I go to people's homes, and for a while I had to take a break because there were so many homes that definitely fell in the category of hoarding.
Yeah.
I was afraid to sit down on anything, so I started carrying my own portable stool and table. Because usually, for a dining room table, you couldn't use the dining room table because it had all this clutter on it or food. I mean, it was unbelievable. Yeah. And one time I had to go to the restroom really bad, and I was trying to hold it, and I just knew I wouldn't be able to make it from there to my house, so I went and used their bathroom.
Oh.
Why didn't I just hold it?
You have to hover. That's what we call the hovercraft.
Yes. And the cobwebs and stuff. I was like, ah!
I know.
But anyway.
I know.
So why won't it work to argue or try to talk sense into an individual who hoards? What is the variable that makes this impossible? And you sort of touched on it, but go ahead.
Yep. So the variable that makes it impossible is it's a perceived value. So if I say the sky is blue and you say it's gray, or that's a bad example.
Well,
'cause those are
we
actually...
just had that now.
Okay,
we just sort of got blue skies
That's a bad
back
example.
yesterday.
Yeah, I know, from the smoke. No, that's a bad example. If I say it's blue and you say, no, it's yellow, that's your belief for whatever reason. And I'm not going to try to understand that. I'll try to understand it. But I'm not going to try to change it without knowledge of why, what potentially helped you foster that belief, what life experiences have you had. There's no way that I can go into a home. So relating it back to my clients and people who hoard, you can't go into a home and just because you're a clean person and you don't hoard, presume to know everything about why they got up to that point. And so the variable that makes it impossible is it's a perceived value. And the only way to uncover that and get to the root of that is mental health help to uncover the why behind the behavior. Because we can essentially say hoarding is an addiction. It's a compulsion, and it's an addiction like anything else that is a vice for somebody. So it doesn't just change overnight. You have to uncover the why. Cognitive behavioral therapy is the therapeutic method for people who hoard. We'll get into that.
Okay.
But that's a variable.
So what you were just saying about, gently talking with them, is that part of the magic sauce?
It is, yeah. Well, the magic sauce is mental health help, and then someone like me, a hoarding individual, a hoarding specialist or expert or what have you, some sort of remediation company that specializes in hoarding. They exist. A lot of people think they don't. Is the magic sauce, because I'm dealing with the possessions and the inevitable behaviors that come along with sorting, and I'm equipped to deal with those. But in terms of diagnosing, medicating, or treating, that's not my job. And the magic sauce is to also have a therapist on site, like you see on the show.
Okay.
So
you started out as a professional organizer, and now you're doing this. How much of an overlap? I mean, because it sounds like, having had the experience of a professional organizer in my office, how much of an overlap is this? And it seems like it wasn't much of a leap for you to go from there to this.
Yeah, it wasn't. And when I started out as an organizer, quite frankly, I was bored. I'm very clean and organized, and I love that. But I kept coming across hoarding scenarios and cases, and I was like, what is this? And once I found out that there was this whole hoarding remediation industry, a lot of it brought to light by mainstream media, Hoarders, Hoarding Buried Alive, I was like, I want to be on that show one day, and I want to do that. And I was drawn towards the more severe, extreme cases, because that's where I felt like there was just a total before and after, which is what I love.
Give me an example of an extreme case.
Oh boy. I just remember being in homes when I was a professional organizer, and I'd walk in and they would, hire a professional organizer. A lot of people who hoard just think they need to be more organized.
Right.
That is not the case. So I'd walk in and, I'd go into a closet and there'd be trash and mountains of trash along with the shoes. And I was like, okay, this isn't just professional organizing.
So wait a minute. When you say trash, what do you mean by trash?
I mean, if we're getting real, diapers, feminine products, seriously.
Unused.
And used.
Oh.
And used. Bags of food. You know the smell of perishing food?
Oh, boy.
Along with shoes, along with dust, dirt, cases like that. Or I'd go into a kitchen and there's mountains of dishes that haven't been washed in months and months and months and months. Or you walk into a home and there's mountains of things that need to be recycled, cardboard boxes, bags of trash. We've seen cat excrement, dog excrement, everything you see on the show.
All
so
right.
that's an extreme case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just to update you, you're listening live to Seniors Matter with your host, Brenda Charles Edwards, on the World Wide Web, RainierAvenueRadio.world, Facebook, and you can also find us on the TuneIn Radio app. My guest today is Erica DiMiele. Erica was drawn to the more severe and hazardous situations and stumbled across many hoarding cases throughout her career, as she just told us. She saw the need there was for people afflicted by hoarding, and these quickly became her favorite jobs to address. Erica was featured on her first Hoarders episode in 2015 and is now officially the newest featured cleanup expert on the show. She transitioned into hoarding and extreme cleaning full time by purchasing Steri-Clean Washington in 2017. You know, the other part of what you do is the accident scenes. And it was really, when I saw this, it brought back, someone said to me probably about 5 years ago, you should get into that business. Because, you know, who's really doing this?
I know.
And especially if there's a murder in the home or wherever. And I remember when I was living in California, I was looking for an apartment, and I saw this one. The lady was taking me through, and I saw it. I go, oh, that's going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So for some reason, the door was open, and I kind of moved it, and behind the door was some blood stain.
Oh, God.
And I said,
Jarring.
what the heck was that about?
Seriously.
She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. She says, there was a murder here, and they were supposed to have everything cleaned up. I said, okay, next.
I know.
That's not going to be me living here.
See,
because,
that doesn't fly.
you know, it's like, okay, so why was this person murdered, and will they be coming back because they think somebody else may be connected to them? No, thank you.
Seriously. And that's why we check all points. We kind of visualize, like, what might have happened. So we check, I don't like that. When there's any blood left anywhere, I'm, like, very OCD. So
Do you use the blue, what is it, the blue light?
We use an illuminator. So it's like
okay.
that, yeah. It's like a frothy kind of foam material that illuminates blood. And we spray that everywhere. So we get everything, because I hate that.
Yeah, that was, I was just like,
oh my God.
Oh, let's have a nightmare now.
Yes.
You know, because I'm thinking, yeah, no, I won't be moving here.
No,
thank you very much. How has mainstream media and television shows affected the true hoarding remediation process? And what is remediation?
Yeah, remediation is like to restore, redeem, clean up. It's a big word. Yeah, so it means to render, clean, what have you.
Okay.
So the way mainstream media, I feel like, has affected the true cleanup process is that whenever we talk to people who inquire with our services, they're like, well, I don't want to be on the show. And I'm like, don't worry, it's not casting right now. Or I don't want, 20 people at my house. And I'm like, it won't be. We send 2 to 5 maximum. Well, I'm not ready for mental health help. Don't worry, we don't have a therapist on our team. I can give you those resources, and I try to stack my clients with resources so they can enlist them. But I feel like people think that the clean out process is as invasive as you see on the show, and it truly isn't. What the show does is my producers love drama because it's a television show, you understand. So they love the drama and the edge factor and all of that, and they like to get the person who hoards riled up. They like me to get them riled up, which I don't do. I don't choose to do because I feel like it's just messing with people, and I don't like that.
Right.
I'll ask them questions, and if they're sassy, I'll give them a little sass appropriately.
Sure.
But I feel like the show and all the shows that, talk about hoarding and discuss hoarding is people think it's invasive. And we're just going to come in with these dump trucks and these garbage bags, and it's not like that.
How long does it take to dehoard or remediate a house?
Yeah. It depends. I mean, it depends on the size of the house. If it's a 2-bedroom apartment compared to a 5-bedroom home, that's different. It typically takes anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks, depending on...
And is this every day?
Yeah. No. I mean, it could be consecutive days. It could be a few days in a row with a stint of a couple-day break. But it also depends more so on what they're getting rid of. Because if they're not willing to, discard a big percentage of their home, we're not going to get to it. And so it just depends on what they're discarding.
Okay. So should an individual who hoards try to sell their belongings instead of donating them? No,
they should not. Because usually what we find is people who hoard never get the right price that they want. So then it ends up perpetuating their hoard, having them keep their possessions for longer than they should. So we recommend donating, and we can talk about specific price values, during the...
Well, you're coming back, Erica.
Okay, I know.
This is not a one-time thing, because there's just too much to talk about here. So you will be back.
Oh, thanks.
For those of you that are just tuning in, you're listening to Seniors Matter with your host, Brenda Charles Edwards, live on RainierAvenueRadio.world website, Facebook, and the TuneIn Radio app. My guest today has been Erica DiMiele, who earned her degree from Hope International University and also earned a hoarding specialty certificate, God get this, from the Institute of Challenging Disorganization. Now that says a lot, and I'm sure they have a number of classes. Erica is a sought-after public speaker and media personality on the topic of hoarding. She's been featured in numerous media outlets and publications. Erica, wow.
It's a lot.
It really is,
It's
but it's so important because for our seniors, like I said, for those that were around during the Depression, they had a mindset of how they had to take care of themselves, and I do believe it's passed on. And I hope that those of you that are listening, that maybe your family members have declared you a hoarder, may think about what the difference is between hoarding and collecting. And gently, family members, help them get some help. Because, as I said earlier, when they start hoarding and their hoard items are more important to them than you, and then they're going to get into isolation, and then they're going to get into problems with being taken advantage of by fraud from the people calling on the phone, all kinds of scams. So you need to protect your family.
Spending a lot of time on the internet, clicking on ads because they're vulnerable.
Exactly.
They're in a dark, depressed space. It's that kind of perpetual buying. Like, we have a lot of Amazon Prime members, and that even is a rabbit hole in itself. I don't choose to be on Amazon. I really don't. I'm like so old-fashioned. I'm like, I'm going to go to the store and get it. It's different, but you're right. They spend a ton of time on the web, and everything's a good idea, and they need this, and they need more. It just perpetuates the issue.
What is that QV channel?
QVC.
QVC. I don't do it, obviously.
Yep. And HSN, yeah.
Because I have a friend that she's better now, but at one point, for about a year, she had this one credit card that she used, and it was strictly for that.
Yeah.
And I just said, and then she told me something, and I said, why?
I know.
I don't get it, but I'm not judging you, but I just don't get it. You sure that's the way you want to spend your money?
I know.
But
I know.
I don't know. So what's a helpful message to leave with our audience today?
A helpful message is that if you are someone who hoards, it's important to know that, first of all, you're not alone. Right. You might feel isolated and alone in your hoard and in your space. And you're not, because I have a business, and I wouldn't be in business if there was only one person in the world who hoarded.
That's true.
Yep. Number two is that there's resources. And so I'd be happy to share resources. Like, I can email you a list of resources that you can put on blast. There's mental health help in the Seattle area surrounding compulsive hoarding and acquiring. There's a fabulous organization called the Hoarding Project. Google them. It's mental health professionals and resource groups for people who hoard. So part of it is just, first of all, acknowledging that there might be an issue. And then just
That's the first step.
There is, because if you perpetuate your hoard and you're in this state of denial, you have to look it in the face and say, I have an issue. We all have our issues. I have an addiction around this. My compulsion is to continue to hoard things. Just know that there's hope. That's the message I would leave.
I think that's a very good message. And also, too, distinguishing, as I said before, what is hoarding. For instance, collecting magazines and newspapers and stacking them up in a room.
Boxes and bags, yep.
Yes. And that's not collecting.
Yep. And clutter, what we say is it's just an unmade decision. That's all clutter is. An unmade or postponed decision.
Oh, I like that. Say that again.
Clutter is just an unmade or postponed decision. That's all it is.
Oh, I love that.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to work on that one. I'd like to thank you, Erica, for joining us on Seniors Matter and sharing the ins and outs of hoarding.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
She's coming back, folks. Don't worry, she's coming back. On next week's show, Rebecca Crichton, Executive Director of Northwest Center for Creative Aging, will be my guest. Oh, thank you for being here. Join me every Friday live at 12:30. Also, for those of you that may not know, I am a notary, a mobile notary. So if you need any financial documents notarized, call me, Black Orchid Notary, 650-265-1193. Tell me where, I'll meet you there. Until next time, thanks for listening, and live your life like it's golden.
Okay, mics are off. Let's answer a couple questions from the listeners.
Okay.
Lynn DeBeele asks, how do you suggest elders deal with racism in the health field?
That's pretty, I don't know.
Whoa.
Oh, that's heavy.
How do I suggest they deal with it? Well, first off, make sure you're going with that they have someone to go with them. And then if you don't feel that they're answering your questions right, or if they're trying to intimidate you, go get another doctor. Because I've had to do that. And yes, just go get another doctor. But make sure the person always has someone with them. I call them patient advocates.
Johnny Corora asks, what's the root course for hoarding?
That's you.
Okay. The root cause of hoarding, there's always some sort of trigger, potentially a trauma or situation in your life, potentially where the hoarding behavior picked up. What we always find is when I walk into a home and I say, how long has your home been in this state? Not, how long has your home been this terrible? How long has your home been in this state? Usually, they give me a year and I say, did something happen in 2010? And there's either a loss of an animal, a family member, a spouse, a parent, a job, money, what have you, where the hoarding behavior really picked up and they found comfort in their possessions.
And Johnny Corora asks, are they Christian, the people doing the remediations?
Can I answer that?
Sure you can.
I am a Christian. I'm a strong Christian.
All right.
Yep. Bible-based.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Me too.
Yep. Protestant raised, very strong Christian. So, and that's my heart behind it. So.
All right.
That was a great question.
Yes, it was. So are we still on, Daniel?
We are just wrapping up here.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Please tune in next week. We love all your attention, and we definitely love to have questions.
Just about to fade out. Okay, we are off the air.
I love that song.
Yeah. Yeah. It's catchy, and
It is.
And the thing is,
Where's the